Hello everyone. So I want to make this video to talk about regret. Again, regret is a word that is dangerous, is a story. Um, and a lot of words that we use when we speak to ourselves, especially, so in this kind of mental chatter, they have this property of being non-real words, like let's say, well, not real, but let's say stuff that you cannot put in a box. So you cannot put regret in a box. You can put a cat, a dog, a bottle in a box because they are tangible. They are obvious things that exist. But regret is more like a story. Now, it's not that all concepts are stories. Like, for example, let's say the concept of addition. So you take one thing and you take another thing and you kind of add them up. Yes, it's a concept, but it's not just a story. It has a practicality. I mean, if you put two cats in a box, you have two cats. One cat first, one cat after, you have two cats. But regret is more like a story. So yesterday we looked at in the previous video at almost, um, and how it is a story. It's an illusion that something was very, very close, but actually it was not. And those stories, again, what is effectively a story? A story is always an image in reality. So when I say a story, what I mean is an image in reality that we put in between, let's say, reality and us, so as an extra layer. And then we look at the reality, we look at the image in reality, we compare, and we make a judgment saying, oh, the image in reality is better. So it's the same thing with Santa Claus. Santa Claus is a story. Santa Claus is image in reality that we put in between us and reality. We look at reality without Santa Claus, then we look at the story with Santa Claus, we compare, and we say the image in reality with Santa Claus is better, and that's our judgment. And then we say there should be Santa Claus as in the actual reality. So the actual reality always appears like a little bit depressing or sad because it misses the extra stuff we make up with our stories in the imagined reality. So in the imagined reality, we can have Santa Claus, but we can have should, so that things should be different. Or could, things could be different. Or we have specific stories about identity, that we are great, we are better than others, we are more holy, we are more spiritual, we are whatever, we are smarter. Or we have stories like we almost did this, or really any stories. So a lot of words or things are just something, or the idea of deserving something. So those are the stories, and the stories are always the same. They follow the same pattern. A story is an image in reality that we put in between us and reality. Then we look at the imagined story, the reality, we compare, we judge that the one with the story is better. And funnily enough, the one with the story is always better. I don't think there is a case where the story is actually worse than the actual reality. So it always makes the imagined reality look better, and then we judge and we say it should be different. It should be something else. Um, so what is regret? Well, regret is a story. It's very similar to should have been different. Is a story that something should have been different. So it was like this, but it's a mix between could and should. So could have been different means that there is an element of potentiality. Potentially it could have been different, whereas should, but it's still an imagined reality of a potential, whereas should is the idea that it would have been better if, but still it implied that it was possible. So they are kind of mixed together. So could means that potentially it was possible, but there is no expression of preference, not necessarily. It could have happened differently, but we don't know if it was better or worse. Whereas should, well, it implies that it could, of course, have happened differently, but it also implies that it would have been better if. So it's an imagined reality. It's like a fork. So it's like there is the actual reality, how it happened, and there is the imagined reality that should have happened in that specific way. So we have this fork in the road. So we look back in the past and we regret. We say, this should have been different. I think regret also puts an emphasis on an individual decision. So I don't think no one regrets having lost. So in the idea of regret, there is the idea of control also, or an illusion of control. So you go to the casino, you put all your money on the roulette, you put it all on the red, it comes out black. So you lose everything. You don't really regret that it was not the right color. Maybe you think you deserve that it was the right color and you win or whatever, but you don't really regret that it was the wrong color. You regret gambling the money. Or maybe you regret making the mistake. You say, I should have made the other color. You regret the choice. You either regret gambling at completely, like just you regret the gambling period, or you regret the color that you choose for the gambling. But you regret usually a choice that you are in control. The problem is, this is related to the idea of agency and the idea of desire. How exactly could it have been different? I mean, where exactly? So in the chain of events, starting from the Big Bang to now, where every single cause is the next consequence, but is also the cause of the next consequence and the cause of the next consequence. How exactly could anything be different? Including your thoughts, because your brain is part of the universe, is part of the laws of physics, it follows the rules of causality, it follows the laws of physics, it's a bunch of atoms doing stuff. It's not that your brain or a part of your brain is independent from causality, is immune from the laws of physics. Your brain is completely subject to the laws of physics, just like the table, the chair, the phone, the camera, your computer is the same. Yes, it's highly complicated, it's highly sophisticated, blah, 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 blah. But still, your brain is subject to the laws of physics, of causality. So we have continuity of causes from the Big Bang to now. Assuming that something could have been different when we look at the past. Now, again, I'm not saying the past is useless, because we can look at the past and learn from it. So the past is useful to look back and learn and try to do something different in the future. But what has happened, as far as we know, based on our understanding of physics and of reality, there was no alternative. Or at least the alternatives only exist in our mind. The alternatives that something could have been different is only an imagined story in our mind, and we compare reality with the imagined story, and then we judge the imagined story is better, and then we suffer. But when exactly something could have been different? What exactly would have been the cause? Because clearly whatever we took as a decision had a cause, and that thing had a cause, and that thing had a cause, and that thing had a cause. So where exactly there was a possibility for something to happen differently? It's not like our brain does not belong to the laws of physics. It's not that our brain is independent from causality. Even our thoughts. What exactly are our thoughts? It's not magic that is like just happening. Well, we may not completely understand it, but we have some understanding, a little bit, about how the brain works, and clearly the brain operates within the laws of physics, just like everything else. We are born as an embryo, which is like a very small number of cells, and then those cells, they split, they replicate, and then they kind of organize. But this completely follows all the rules, like laws of physics, laws of biology, blah, blah, blah. There is no exception. It's not that our mind, our brain, is an exception to the physical world. It operates with causality, just like everything in physics. Life is an emergent phenomena of chemistry, and chemistry is an emergent phenomena of physics. And they all are based in causality from the Big Bang to now. So our thoughts are also based on causality. So the cause of my current thought is my previous thought. And of course, some stimuli that I got from the outside world. And maybe it interferes with my memory, etc., etc. But to keep it simple, the cause of a thought is the previous thought. There is almost a chain of thought since we are born. Again, of course, there are outside elements that enter our mind. It's of course, I mean, if we were, let's say that from tomorrow we go into a dark room and we cannot see, we cannot hear, we cannot smell, we cannot touch, whatever. There is no sensory input. If we go into this dark room with no possible sensory input, to some extent, all that is left is our memories and our thoughts. And in this case, every new thought will be caused by the previous thought. It will be a chain of thoughts. Every thought is caused by the previous thought, like a chain. Of course, there is some outside interference, but this outside interference is also related to causality. It's also related to the laws of physics. And there is never a fork, because what will be the element that creates the fork? Everything is dependent on the previous state. Any fork in reality is just imagined. Everything depends on the previous state. So it's a continuity of state from the previous state cause the next state, etc., etc., etc. So what is effectively regret? Is a mix of the could story and the should story. Things could have been different. But how? Because it's just a function of causality. They could not really have been different, or at least the idea that they could have been different is most likely just a story in our mind, is an image in reality. And then they should have been different. But should, in what sense? What should even means? First of all, it implies that it could have been different. But then it also implies, again, an image in reality that is better. It should have been like this. So here is my image in reality that is better than the current reality, and I'm going to compare reality with image in reality and judge reality based on image in reality and say that it would be better if there was Santa Claus. It would be better if I had made a choice differently. But what is exactly I anyway? I mean, we looked into identity. So there is identity as stories, there is identity as inescapable point of view, but it is, at least it looks like to be, from observation. I'm not trying to make up stuff. It looks like just like an inescapable point of view. We don't know, I mean, does that mean that this inescapable point of view gets to make decisions, whatever that means? Because decision kind of feels like something that is independent from causality, something that is immune from the laws of physics. That's why I prefer to use the word hesitation. It describes better. So yes, when we think and when we have our chain of thoughts, where a thought generates a thought, we generate a thought, we generate a thought, etc. When this happens, we feel we are deciding, but even deciding itself is kind of a story, because what we know for sure is that we are feeling hesitation. And we call it deciding, but deciding implies that something huge is going on, like some actual decision independent from causality is happening. That's what deciding implies. But in reality, maybe it's just something a lot more simpler. It's the feeling of hesitation. When we feel that it's hot, we just feel that it's hot. When we feel that it's cold, we just feel that it's cold. When we feel that we hesitate, we just hesitate. Our brain is processing stuff, but are we, and what is we anyway? Are we actually deciding anything? Is there some special, separate, magical agent immune from the laws of physics that is making a completely independent decision that is independent from causality? Or we are just feeling a feeling of hesitation? Of course, we have an identity. We shouldn't fall for the extra stories, the extra bullshit of the spiritual gurus that talk about no identity, or like unity with whatever, or separate self doesn't exist. Depends what self means, of course. It may not exist if self means one thing. It may exist if self means another thing. But clearly, there is a difference in my experience and your experience. So maybe what I've found so far as the best definition for identity is a point of view, different points of view, inescapable point of view. So I have my point of view, you have your point of view, everyone has their point of view. But it doesn't mean this point of view gets to decide, or at least we don't know. We have no valid reason to assume that it does. It's not that we believe that it doesn't. We just don't know. I mean, maybe it does. Maybe there is some magical thing somewhere that produces actual decisions. Maybe. But we have no evidence of it at the moment. So why should we believe it? It doesn't mean we are going to believe its opposite. We are just not going to believe anything. Why would we? I mean, we just don't know. But based on everything we know about science and physics and causality, etc., probably it's not the case. Probably there isn't a special, small, independent part of our brain that is immune from causality and take actual decisions. Seems much more logical to say that there is a feeling of hesitation. So what exactly are we regretting? Because you can only regret something if you truly believe that it could and should have been different. But most likely, it couldn't have been different. Because because it hasn't been different. We are just adding a story that it could. But there is no representation in reality of that story. I mean, all we know is what happened. Well, all we know is what there is right now, and we can remember roughly how we came to this point. And then we can, of course, imagine that something could have went different, but what does that really mean, could have been different? I mean, things went the way they went because of the previous cause, from cause to cause to cause to cause to cause to cause. A long chain of causes, a long chain of thoughts. There is no point where some magical thing decided A or B, or at least there is no reason to believe that. Maybe it is the case, who knows? But we don't know. And for sure we have no evidence of this magical thing. So we just don't know. But why would we assume, based on what we know of physics and everything, that something could have been different? It doesn't make sense. So effectively, we are just creating a story and superimposing this story on top of reality, and then judging reality and say it would have been better if it had been different. And of course, this implies that we believe it could have been different, but most likely it couldn't. So if we realize that most likely it couldn't, or there is no good reason to believe, or there is no evidence ever, if we really think about everything we did, at the time we did it, there was a very good reason. That was the best choice our brain could come up with. Now, of course, in hindsight, with extra information, with extra experience, maybe it looks like a stupid decision. But it's also an element of survival bias, in the sense that if we had gambled, let's say we gambled all our money on the black, and it came out red, then we say that was a mistake. But what if it had came out black and we had doubled our money? We would be saying this was the best decision in our life. But actually it's the same decision. It's just a matter of luck. The outcome was different. So again, it's like when we look back at decisions and regret, there are many, many strong factors. One, that most likely it couldn't have been different. Because why exactly? I mean, we clearly did the best we could at the time with the information we had at the time, our experience, etc., etc. Of course, now we have more information, but we are kind of cheating because we acquired more information. Plus, we even know the outcome. Maybe the outcome was highly random, like 50-50, whereas now we know the outcome. So we are kind of cheating because now that we know the outcome, we are saying, well, we shouldn't have done it, or we should have done more of it, or whatever. But we are just cheating. It's just because we know the outcome. This is called survival bias. It's like once the thing has happened, you only see at, let's say, the success or the failure, whatever has survived. So if the people that won, let's say people play the lottery, and the people that win, they talk a lot about how successful they are because they won. But that's because the one that lost don't talk about it. So it's kind of a distortion. So when we regret, we are selectively looking at what we consider was a bad choice. So it's almost like what we consider a mistake has survived in our mind, whereas we kind of forget the success. So we say, I mean, it's like, imagine we play 100 times the roulette, and 50 times we win, 50 times we lose. And then we say we shouldn't have lost. So we regret the 50 times where we lost, but we are happy about the 50 times where we won. and we would like to selectively eliminate the 50 times where we lost. This is completely absurd, because also the wins were the result of this chance. So, of course, we made some bad decisions in hindsight, but we also made some good ones with the same brain, with the same memory, with the same experience, with the same thinking. It doesn't make sense to selectively remove the bad decisions and say we shouldn't have made those just because now we know they were wrong, which we didn't know before. But the process that we followed to make the good decisions and the bad decisions was effectively the same, just that some ended up good and some ended up bad. But again, it was the same brain, it was the same memory, it was the same experience that produced both the good and bad decisions. It's ridiculous to believe that we can go back in time and change it, or that it should have been different. Based on what? I mean, the same mind produced both the good and bad decisions. Of course, in hindsight, it's easy to desire to remove the bad ones, but it's ridiculous. It's like playing 100 times on the roulette. You win 50 times, you lose 50 times, and then you say, I shouldn't have played the 50 times that I lost, but I should have played the 50 times that I won. But it makes no sense, because only now, after the fact, you know which one won. You didn't know it at the time. You just took the decision to play. But the decision to play made you win 50 times and lose 50 times. It didn't just make you lose. There was no way to win 50 times without losing 50 times on a large number of decisions. Of course, on a single roll on the roulette, it was 50-50. You could either have won or lost. And it can feel a little bit more that it could have been different, but it's just an illusion. Because if we look on a very large number of games, on 1,000 games, the outcome of the roulette on 1,000 games is going to be very, very close to 500 wins and 500 losses. There is just no way to avoid it. It's called the law of large numbers. So the bigger the sample, the closer it reflects the actual intrinsic probability. So the probability of the roulette is 50-50. If you play 1,000,000 times, you will almost exactly win 500,000 times, lose 500,000 times. So the decisional process is the same for, let's say, the good decisions and the bad decisions, whatever that means, good and bad, but our interpretation. So the idea that we could have come back in the past, or some kind of magical thing could have swapped around and changed only the bad decisions, is completely ridiculous. It doesn't make sense from a physical perspective of causality. Does it make sense from a statistical perspective? Does it make sense from any perspective? It's just a story.